Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Trey. Welcome to the Tennessee Innkeeper YouTube channel. In today's video, I have an issue, and this is all self-inflicted on my ants by accident. I've been recently doing honey water, and for those of you that know anything about honey water, you'll know that it needs to be refrigerated, and it really doesn't need to be sitting in your fridge for a long amount of time or inside of your ant's outworld for a very long time, otherwise it will ferment and your ants can die. Well, I haven't had any issues with the ants dying from the honey fermentating, but I have had a huge issue with the honey leaking out of the Biformica ants liquid feeders. Now, I've done some research and I've found out that this is not the liquid feeder's fault. This is 100% my fault, and I've actually tested the theory. So I found it on the Biformica website, and I'll try to link it in the description, but basically I've been keeping the honey in the fridge and immediately putting it inside of the liquid feeders and then immediately inside of the outworlds. Well, this caused, I guess, the gases inside of the liquid feeders to build up and I guess burst, I guess we could say, and cause the liquid to build up a lot of pressure and eventually just push out of the holes of the liquid feeders. Now, this is completely normal, and actually, if you understand, I guess, physics, then you know that this would happen because of the air pressure that's ambient in the room is different than, obviously, the colder honey water. Then it's going to cause a huge shift in the liquid feeders temperature as well. You know, gases expand, whatever have you. Yeah, I'm not a scientist, y'all. I don't know it, but basically that's what happened. So a couple of my mini hearths and my casita, they have honey water all in the outworld. And when I tell you guys this stuff stinks, I mean like it stinks. The outworlds smell atrocious. I feel so bad for my ants. But basically, what I'm going to be doing in this video is I'm going to cap all the outworlds off and I'm going to make them inaccessible to the ants. And I'm actually going to create my own outworlds. I found these awesome containers at Hobby Lobby, and I actually found the idea of going to Hobby Lobby from Reddit. I'll also post the original Reddit post that I found in the description, but someone on there made their own ant nests and they made their own outworld. They made these outworlds out of these cheap containers, and you can get them in various sizes, and they're really cheap. I think I said that already. I'm kind of brain farty here, but they have just enough room and they kind of mimic a couple of the outworlds that I've seen online. So I'm going to give my own shot at this. I'm going to try this myself. I've got some plaster of Paris that I have left over from where I tried to make my own ant nests where they miserably failed. But long story short, plaster is not good for making ant nests. It's too dry. I don't believe it holds moisture very well. If you want to make your own ant nest out of a material, you can use grout or hydrostone. Hydrostone is actually a lot better. It absorbs moisture way better and holds it, and yeah, it's just so much better. So if you guys want to make your own nest, use hydrostone. I think it's also called gypsum. Anyways, this is not a video on how to make your own nest. This is how we're going to make my outworlds. Now, I've got two sizes, and the sizes I'm going to consider these, we'll just call them medium and large, because they had smaller ones there, but I don't feel that it was necessary, especially if we are going to be putting my Camponotus Pennsylvanicus colony with this outworld. They are a larger colony, and the outworld that is attached to the casita, it's a lot smaller. This is the size of a, I guess, like baseball display case for the casita. That's kind of what it mimics, if you ask me. Maybe not to some, but it kind of looks like that. So we're going to be getting a huge upgrade with this much larger outworld. I'm going to have to get a lot more tubing. Luckily, I live a few minutes from a hardware store, so I'm going to run and get some more tubing, and we'll get started on this project. Now, we are working with acrylic containers. I was originally going to use these Tupperware containers, but like I said, I found that Reddit post, and I decided, hey, we're going to go and get these because these are going to be way better quality, and they're not going to be such an eyesore on the shelf. It's not going to look like I'm keeping moldy food on my shelf. So let's go get some tube, and I'm going to get into this tutorial. Really quick, I just wanted to show my setup here for recording. It was kind of goofy, but basically what you're going to need here is some plaster of Paris. You will also need your container of choice for your outworld, and here's a drill. It wasn't in focus in shot, so you see the battery. That's what you'll need. I also have a uni-bit on my drill. So the first step here is pretty straightforward. I'm going to drill 2 holes in the top. I did not measure to make sure my holes were centered directly in the middle. I just kind of winged it. It turned out pretty well. Just a few notes that I would like to say, a few tips. Whenever it comes to drilling, I would highly recommend setting your drill on a higher speed just for the initial hole, just because it'll help melt that acrylic faster. You don't want to put a whole lot of pressure on the acrylic because it will crack. And actually, I did crack the acrylic on this container in a very small spot on the top, and you'll actually be able to see that on the first hole. But it was pretty straightforward. Since this was a lot thicker, it was a lot easier to drill through compared to those little baseball collection cubes like I had before. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I did a previous video where I tried to make a tubs and tube setup, and I tried to use a unibit to drill into an acrylic container. It did not work. But this one, it works pretty well. So here's the first hole. This is a ventilation hole. I highly recommend doing this, otherwise your Outworlds are going to reek. They are not going to have any airflow, and it's just going to be miserable for yourself and for your ants. So here's the finished product. 2 holes that are not centered or even with each other at all. Another thing I can recommend, clean up in between. This acrylic container that I got specifically, it scratches so easy, and you'll see it in a couple of the shots. You might have seen it in that shot of me showing the top off. It scratches so easy. If you can find a better quality tub, I highly recommend it. This one, it's nice. You can see through it pretty well. But again, if you can find a better acrylic, highly recommend that one. That one scratched so easy. So another thing that I did with the holes here on the side was I thought I was doing pretty good trying to use the tube as a way to see my size. I tried pushing it on the unibit to see where I needed to be, and it just didn't work. And you'll see me struggle here in a second. So I went and got these from the Ant Shack. I actually had a couple of these left over from some of their Outworlds that I used. This is not a sponsored video, but I do highly recommend going and getting some Ant Shack Outworlds if you don't want to DIY your own. They're fair priced and they're really high quality. But yeah, here it is, all put on. The little tube connectors, they just kind of screw on there. They're 3D printed. And here is what it looks like after. You can see the scratches on the top. So here's that Tupperware container I was originally going to use as an Outworld before I found these other containers. And I'm going to use this to mix the plaster. Now with this plaster of Paris specifically, it's 2 parts plaster to 1 part cold water. You can use warmer water if you want it to cure or set faster, but I was in no rush, so I just used cold water. Now you'll see that I kind of struggled here. I had to add a little bit more water here and there. It kept chunking up or getting chunky, so I kind of tipped the container like at an angle, and that seemed to help out a lot. I was able to get a lot of those thicker chunks out. You'll see in another part of the video when I go to pour this that I didn't get all the chunks out, but it's enough to where you won't notice it in the final product. So when you go to pour, I recommend using a funnel. I just kind of went for it here, and it got all over the side of the walls of the container, so I had to wipe that down. But it wasn't too bad. It wasn't a whole lot of splatter marks, but if you want it to be kind of spread better, more evenly, if you will, use a funnel or a makeshift funnel, whatever you got to do to make it more smooth. I think English there. But yeah, I just use this popsicle stick that I got from Hobby Lobby. I got a big 500 pack of them for $4, if that. And I use that to kind of spread it around. I also, after I got a kind of a nice even smooth layer on the bottom, I kind of shook the container a little bit to try to help get some of the air bubbles out, as well as trying to smooth that top layer out, because this is supposed to technically mimic nature, but I want it to be kind of smooth. So here's me trying to clean the walls off, and actually I did pretty good. The final product, it was pretty clear. Now, one thing I can say before we get to the decorations and stuff, I do highly recommend letting your Outworld, if you did use plaster of Paris, I highly recommend letting it sit for 10 to 15 minutes just out in the open. I would not put too much heat on it. I would just make sure there's good airflow, because that is the best thing you can do with plaster, to let it dry. Give it about 10 to 15 minutes. I waited about 6 minutes before I started doing the decorations here, and the mixture was still kind of soupy. You want it to just be kind of wet looking, but you don't want it to be like soupy. It's supposed to mimic more like I guess Nutella. That's kind of the consistency I would say your plaster should be. And so here we are with the decorations. These are just things I had lying around. Those little grass plants that I'm using here, they were like 98 cents at Walmart in the aquarium aisle. It normally had 3 petals on it, but I used them elsewhere in another project that I had. And then I have just a couple of these little stones to put around, and actually these stones match perfectly with the pebbles I use. And it's ironic because the pebbles are also from Ant Shack, from one of their Outworld kits. But I just kind of went for it. I didn't really have any sort of direction or idea for how I wanted to place all of the things in there. I know with certain things you want to have depth, so you want your taller stuff to be like, quote, in the back, and your smaller stuff in the front. I just, like I said, kind of went for it with that idea in mind, but because I didn't have a lot to work with, it doesn't really look like I tried that at all. But I wanted the tube that I was going to have the ants come through to be a little bit more discreet, so that's why I put the little grass pieces, or green plants, whatever you want to call them, I put those in the corner near that port, and I put a couple more rocks there, so that way the ants had easier access to get in and out. I'm sure they will probably get some of the loose pebbles that I put in here later and do something to it. Ants are creative. They want their house and their nest how they want it. Not my place to worry. Isn't that just pretty? Here we are. Here's the plaster after I got the rocks in. I gave it a little more time before I did the pebbles. I waited another like 3 or 4 minutes just to kind of make sure all the pebbles didn't fall through the plaster. But like I said, these are the pebbles you can get from Ant Shack. I guess they're pebbles. I don't really know what you call it, but I just sprinkled them in over top of the plaster. No real direction. I just wanted it covered to where it looked pretty natural. And I think I achieved it pretty well. You'll see here in just a second. So guys, here is pretty much what it looks like at the end. It has had a couple of days to dry, and I'm on day 2. It's still got a little moisture built up, so I'm not going to put it on the ant nest just yet. But be sure to stay tuned for part 2 where I do. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, guys. We'll see you in the next video. I appreciate your patience, and I love seeing your guys' comments. This video, let's comment down below chili cheese pepper with a side of rice. That's gonna be how I know you made it to the end of the video. It's a bigger one than normal. It's not just 1 word or 2 words. We're going with a whole phrase here, guys. But yes, again, we'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.